Hi everybody, so we're on to session 2 of week 3. Hopefully you've been through session 1. I know there's a lot to listen to and to take in, but you can obviously pause and replay bits. Just a recap of the witches and how Shakespeare presents them and why they're so interesting as characters. What I want us to do today is to relate that to an exam style question. So a question you might get in an exam would be something like, how does Shakespeare present the witches as evil characters? So obviously this question is asking you to do two things really. It's asking you to think about the witches as evil. And as we talked about in session 1, it's not as straightforward as whether they're evil or not, is it? It's more important what they represent about evil than whether they are evil. Because we can never know if Shakespeare thinks they're evil. We can just know that he was using the stereotypes and anxieties of his age to represent evil in this play. And obviously, secondly, the word how, and that means methods. So that means really digging into Shakespeare's language and thinking about what he does. As a starting point, can you please pause this video and spend about 5 minutes generating some ideas based on what you did yesterday, the close activity and what I talked to you about. Things you Okay, so 5 minutes just thinking anything at all you know about the witches and the concept of evil or the idea of evil. Okay, just make it as a list. Excellent. So I did the task as well. So this is the list I made of things that come to mind when I think about the witches and the concept of evil in the play. Obviously, at the time, it was commonly believed that witches were evil, that they had a pact with the devil to get power. So that's really important. The witches clearly represent the beliefs of the age. Shakespeare deliberately makes them reflect what people believed witches did or looked like. They open the play, so they are integral to establishing the theme of evil. We know this isn't a play about goodness because it opens with characters who were synonymous with evil at the time. They signal the duality of human nature, and that's quite a much more complex thing, really. All I mean by that is that human nature has two sides to it, that it has goodness and evil within it. And I'm really meaning the fair is foul line here, that they represent this idea that human nature is all kinds of shades of grey, and some are quite light and full of goodness, and some are quite dark and quite evil. I've said as well, they prompt the evil act of regicide. They don't cause it or suggest it, but their predictions prompt it. Shakespeare makes them deliberately confusing. They talk in riddles, they don't lie to Macbeth, but they confuse him. And obviously that's a plot device, it moves the plot forward, but I think more importantly, the audience, we are meant to be confused by them because they symbolise that evil that sits outside of human understanding, that we can't fully comprehend everything about ourselves or about the world. So you may have had additional things, but those are the sorts of things that when we think about the witches and what they represent in the play or whether they're evil, that hopefully come to mind. So what I'd like to do with all that now is to condense it down to one GST paragraph. So a 3-sentence paragraph. I don't want any textual evidence in this paragraph. It's just an introduction. You're going to offer an overview in 3 sentences about the witches and whether or not they're evil or how they represent ideas about evil. So just a quick reminder, we start with a general sentence. And I've suggested you start that sentence with the words throughout the play. So something about how the witches are presented. Throughout the play, Shakespeare presents, or throughout the play, the witches, and just say what they do. You know, they come along, they make predictions, they conjure spells. Just a very general sentence about what the witches do throughout the play. They only appear 3 times. Then something more specific about them, and I've suggested that we use for this sentence the in particular semicolon however structure. So in particular leads you to say something specific about the witches. Now obviously, in particular, they prompt the act of regicide, don't they? Their predictions cause Macbeth to commit the deed. However, is not essential. It just allows you to show the examiner, you show there's more than one interpretation. So in particular, they cause the most evil act of the play, they cause the regicide. However, they don't actually do anything, do they? All they do are make predictions. It's ultimately Macbeth who chooses to kill the king. So that's just an example of what I mean by a however moment, an opportunity for you to say something that contradicts what you've said in the first half of the sentence. And then lastly, your thesis sentence, your big one, it seems that Shakespeare. When we try to establish not just what they're like as characters, our general sentence is just saying what they're like. Our specific sentence is saying things they specifically do. And our thesis one is saying why Shakespeare used them. So it seems that Shakespeare used the witches in order to, trying to go big and make some kind of clever point. So use your notes you made, and it's just a case of taking bits of those notes and putting it together into this 3-sentence format. If you get stuck, email me or your English teacher and we will help you. If you manage to do it, email this to us so that we can have a little look at it. Okay? And that's it for today's session. Short session from me, but more work for you to do. If you're stuck, please go back to session 1 and re-listen to bits.